Hello and welcome to the MIDI Association booth at the NAMM Show 2026. All right. Go MIDI. MIDI 2.
Oh, MIDI 2.
MIDI 2. All right, we're going to talk today about profiles for drums. And profiles is a MIDI 2 concept. And so a profile defines the way two devices talk to each other, discover each other, and discover what they can actually do together. And so MIDI 2.0 is based on bidirectional communication. And so devices in MIDI 2.0 world can discover each other automatically and automatically configure so the user doesn't have to say, how do I connect this device to this? And is it on the right MIDI channel and so on? Devices can auto-configure using MIDI 2.0 mechanisms. And within that realm of MIDI 2.0 bidirectionality, we have profiles. So one device can say to the other, I'm a drum device. How about you? Oh yes, I'm a drum device. And then the two devices know how to talk to each other. Okay. And we have been working in the MIDI Association on two profiles for drums. The default drum note map profile and the drum performance profile. And these profiles address a wide range of instruments. There's a lot of different types of MIDI devices that have some kind of drum-related functionality. Okay, so the first drum profile we did is the default drum note mapping profile. And this really has a background in MIDI that goes back all the way to the mid-1980s with drum machines where different drums were assigned to different notes. And there emerged a pattern that this note is always a kick drum, this note is always a snare drum. This is across many different products. And that became standardized in a standard called General MIDI. And so the default drum note map profile takes this mapping of different types of drums assigned to specific notes so that there's compatibility between products. And so now turning that into a profile, if a device says, I conform to the default drum note profile, you know that there's a kick on C, that there's going to be a snare on D, and so on. And so this is at the this is at the heart of this default drum note mapping profile. It has a keyboard background, but it also relates quite well to other instruments because other instruments can understand, well, that's where that note is. And so when we put that into a MIDI 2.0 profile, these two different types of devices can say, oh, let's use the drum note mapping profile together. One could be a keyboard, one could be a different kind of drum instrument, and they will know how to talk to each other. So just a couple of examples here. A drum machine and a trigger pad could agree to use the drum note map profile together. Or a keyboard and a plugin running in a DAW. And this discovery mechanism will happen, and they'll all know to do the same things the same way. Now, one of the things that it does that is not very drum-like is its control of hi-hats. On a keyboard, in this mapping, we have a closed hi-hat on one black key, then an open hi-hat and a pedal hi-hat. And that works well on a keyboard because you don't have a hi-hat pedal. And so hi-hat pedal control is one of the big differences between that default drum note map profile that I just described and the drum performance profile that I'll explain briefly now. So the drum performance profile really examines more directly how drums work. And so this is for electronic drum sets or drum instruments that have a more drum-like interface than this default mapping that we've had for 40 years in MIDI. So we now have a definition that we've defined on things like position, playing position on a drum. Where did I strike the drum? Not just what sound it is, but how did I play it? We have a hi-hat pedal distance and pressure that is expressed by MIDI now. Instead of using the three black notes, we can actually get a hi-hat pedal distance to control. We have a gesture in MIDI 2.0 messaging on how to choke a cymbal or to mute a drum by putting your hand on it to stop it from ringing. And then we have properties for each drum instrument. The type of instrument, whether it's a kick drum or a snare drum or a high tom, the name of the instrument can be communicated. So not only is this a snare drum, it's a 14-inch snare drum, and it's 6 inches deep, or it's an extra deep snare drum. You can actually just give it a name, a user-friendly name. You could control the volume, pan, and many more properties using this profile. And these devices know, if I send you this message, oh, you want me to adjust the pan position of this. So the profile defines the MIDI messages that we're using. So the default drum mapping profile, that specification is available now at MIDI.org for download. And as I said, it applies to a lot of instruments, really to any instrument that uses MIDI and has some kind of drum functionality, should start to support the default drum note map profile. The drum performance profile, which adds that extra layer of control, is something that we've been working on over the last year and a half, I think, in a committee. And we're just finishing that work now, and we expect to release that within Q1. So we're just coming to the conclusion of the spec now, and we'll be publishing that spec. I have with me my friend Steve. Steve is going to tell us a little bit why that matters.
I was just looking for a place to sit down. No, I've been really honored to be on this committee for the last little while. It really means a lot to, as far as for not only recording music but also for performing. Like Mike was saying, one of the key things, I think the hi-hat was a great example that he gave, as far as the hi-hat being kind of an archaic, open, closed, and pedal, that you've got all those nuances there that now the instruments can communicate with each other about what I'm doing. That kind of expressiveness and that articulation that you want to be able to get to be able to communicate to another device. Now those devices will be able to communicate and do that. Mike was also saying about like the different snare drums, like what type of snare drum is, to be able to communicate the name of the snare drum. You got the name of the snare drum. What type of snare drum is it? What are some of the properties of it? But even things from a performance standpoint, even besides, for example, like the radius, as far as the positional sensor, you also have radius as well. So where you're at, if you look at it like a clock or a compass, where exactly are you playing on that drum? And those are great things. There's a lot of applications for it. If you look at even example, like from an educational standpoint, you look like someone trying to do with a practice pad to be able to play, and you've got maybe some drum notation for rudiments, and you have rudiments like a paradiddle is right, left, right, left, right, left, left. Right now, before you couldn't really, there's no way you could distinguish right hand to left hand. So now you're going to be able to do that. You can actually, it'll know and communicate if it's a right hand or a left hand, depending on where you play on the pad. So some of those things are really important to be able to have that kind of depth of information and articulations there that two devices can communicate on. So it doesn't matter also, even for example, like hardware communicating with a DAW. That's always been kind of a struggle. This is going to make it a lot easier and a lot more seamless to be able to have that communication, that bilateral communication taking place, so both instruments know what they're doing. And part of that is some instruments may communicate, and one might say, I don't know how to do that, and the other side will say, that's fine, now I know how to deal with you. Now I know what you don't know. And that's a great thing too, because you're not sending information and thinking, why is it not picking up this information? But it will know, they can communicate with each other, and they know each other's capabilities. And I think that's really important as well. Again, from the user standpoint, making it much easier for the user to be able to be able to do what they want to do musically and be able to communicate that through that new MIDI spec, through new MIDI 2.0. And especially get all these manufacturers, like I think the MIDI Association did a great job of doing, all these manufacturers start adopting this. Now all the instruments can communicate each other with the same information, with the same language. And I think it's really important. It's going to be a big breakthrough for, at least from a drummer perspective, how I communicate myself, my drumming, my expression, what I'm playing, and the instruments I'm playing, to be able to communicate to another device, and it knows what I'm doing. So I think it's really important. It's really cool stuff for me.
Thanks, Steve. I'd like to thank the members of the committee who've been putting together this standard. between the two standards, we worked on this for over 2 years. And we have participation from drum companies, including Roland and Zildjian and Yamaha, plug-in companies, DAW and DW Drums. They make a great drum plug-in. So a lot of companies have had input to this specification. And if you're a developer of software or you make a drum instrument and this interests you, please come and talk to us. Contact us at MIDI.org, the MIDI Association. I'm here, Steve's here afterwards to ask any questions if you're a manufacturer. But are there any people with questions they'd like to ask now while we're up here? Maybe take this mic and see what we can say.
Hello. Does this render all of our hardware now obsolete? The stuff that the end user is using?
Not really. Some hardware that exists today could be updated with a firmware update to add this feature. Apart from that, the way this spec is designed, it has a fairly high level of backward compatibility. So an existing device may not do the auto discovery, but a lot of the messaging is actually the same. And so there is some backward compatibility. So it's not completely obsolete, but you won't get the full functionality until the new product's on the market. Good question, thank you. Any other questions? Yeah.
Hello. As we look to make drums, e-drums, and the MIDI experience with drums more and more like realistic and comprehensive, I'm curious if there's any other like goodies you can share that you've learned or things that we're able to do. I'm thinking about like rim shots, things that, like things like that are coming along, or how those might change in the way that they're managed by MIDI 1.0 versus 2.0.
Sure. There are new things that we're doing in MIDI 2.0 that allow greater expression of a note that you play. And so using the MIDI 2.0 note for the drum profile, we have extra data that we could put into the drum that express gestures like, is this a rim shot? Where on the drum are you playing? Not just are you playing and how loud, but where are you playing it? So there's a gestural property in the note on that has a number of different settings that you can express. And then we have other controllers. Steve, do you have any further comment on that?
No, regarding the rim shot, it'll know is this rim shot on or off. It's the depth of how far you're hitting the rim shot too. That's why I say it's such a much more intensified and a more granular level for the expression of where you're at. So again, it's really knowing exactly where you are. It's obviously just almost the opposite of note on, note off, because it really does know exactly where you're playing, the gesture you're playing.
All right. Yes.
I wondered if you had thought about brushes.
Yes, we didn't discuss that gesture, but it's an important one. In the profile, we have a way of expressing the motion of a brush with the position of it as it moves, how far out from the center and then around, how hard you're pressing, all adds up to the amount of excitement in the drum. And that is expressed through a controller, the amount of sound that's coming out. And it can vary. It's not just a strike, but it varies. And
Yeah, I mean, it'll get down to that kind of detail. We're going to be able to do that with brushes and things like that. So yeah, very much so. Even for the 10 guys that still play brushes, it'll work great with me. Yeah. Just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm a jazz guy. I play brushes.
all right, thank you for coming. If you have questions, we'll be here. And we will see you at the next presentation in another 10 minutes, I think. Thank you.